love both Christmas and drugs, so it's weird that this year, 2022, is the very first time that I have heard that Santa Claus is based on shamans passing out magic mushrooms to random people in the wintertime. If you're confused right now, good. That means that I managed to hear about it before you did, which makes me feel slightly less out of the loop. But when I recently stumbled upon an article about Santa and the magic mushroom, I Googled around a bit and I learned, it turns out people have been talking about this every Christmas since even before COVID-19. So it's like a million years. At least that long. For instance, Vice posted a story in 2014 called Santa Claus Was a Shroom-tripping Shaman. I was inspired to make a holiday weed feast after finding out that Santa Claus's surprising origins include psychedelic mushrooms, reindeer piss, and shamanism. Now, before I get into Vice's evidence for this, let me spoil the ending for you. It's probably bullshit. Wow. Now this story has three things I love: Christmas, drugs, and being a giant buzzkill. Fuck yeah. Okay, so here's the evidence for the connection between Siberian shamans and Santa Claus. And it's the kind of evidence that a lawyer might call circumstantial, but I'm just going to call pathetic. Number one, Siberian shamans consumed the Amanita muscaria mushroom for both healing and spiritual purposes. This is the quintessential magic mushroom. You know, it's got the bright red or orange cap with white spots on it. And that much is true. Siberian shamans did consume and do consume this mushroom. Number two, Siberian reindeer also consumed the mushroom. Drinking their milk or their piss would result in people getting the hallucinogenic properties of the mushroom without most of the making you barf everywhere properties. This is also true. That really does work. If you don't want to barf too much, just feed it to a reindeer and then drink their piss. And that's it. That's the evidence. From here on out, we are in the citation needed zone. Number three, the shamans dressed up like the mushrooms in red and white and then went door to door by sleigh, handing them out to people. But with all of the snow, they couldn't get in the door, so they had to drop down through the chimney. Yet no one has any evidence that that is true. No one has any evidence to suggest shamans got around via sleigh, that they randomly gave away sacred herbs, or that they tumbled down chimneys because indigenous people of Siberia don't know how to clear a driveway. There's definitely no evidence that they dressed up like a mushroom. Cosplay hadn't even been invented yet, you guys. In fact, if that were the case, then we would see a very clear through line in which Santa has always been dressed in red and white to look like this mushroom, which anyone who has ever had one of those one weird fact a day calendars knows is not true. You know, Santa and his relatives, like Father Christmas, spent a long time without any one particular color scheme. I was always partial to, like a deep blue velvet in my Father Christmases. And the fact that we think of Santa as being mostly dressed in red and white these days is mostly thanks to Coca-Cola for making Santa their mascot in 1931 and dressing him in their brand's colors. So that's right, hippies. It wasn't drugged up shamans. It was capitalism. Number four, we hang stockings up by the chimney because that's how the shamans dried out the mushrooms to prepare them for ingestion. Again, no evidence for this. Yes, mushrooms are better dried out, but it has nothing to do with your socks. Historians by and large accept that stockings date back to a myth of a wealthy Saint Nick feeling bad for a guy who couldn't afford the dowries for his daughters. So Saint Nick tossed coins through the window at night, which landed in one of the girls' socks that was drying by the fire. Boom, Christmas stockings. Number five, we put presents under the tree because that's where mushrooms grow. Yeah, seriously, that's one of the claims. Again, if this were true, we could trace this tradition all the way back to contact with the Arctic shamans, but we can't. There's a reason why, as Thomas Hatsid points out over at Project CBD, A Visit from St. Nicholas doesn't even mention a tree, but does mention stockings. Because before capitalism got out of control, Santa would just put a few treats and shiny objects in the stockings and call it a night. Everything fit in your socks. Now he's bringing us PlayStations, which do not fit in socks, or even on the tree, as in the song I'll Be Home for Christmas, which was written in 1943 when I guess presents were small enough to be put on the tree. Now they don't, so they go at the bottom of the tree. And that's it. That's the evidence. Look, holidays, traditions, and entire religions don't just spring into existence pure and unique. I mean, just look at the clusterfuck that was the Greeks, the Romans, and other polytheistic cultures. Zeus is kind of like the Roman Jupiter, both of whom absorbed the idea of Sabazios from the Frisians, and they all have similar powers to Indra from the Hindus. There's all of this cross-pollination. As cultures take over from other cultures, they get blended in so that, for instance, people will accept whatever god you want them to believe in so long as you get to keep the fun festival where we eat good food on the first full moon after the 39th day of Fucktober or whatever. So is it out of the question that our favorite gift-giving mythological being was influenced in some way by shamans in Siberia? Well, no, but it's a pretty extraordinary claim. With a lot of traditions like this, the influences come from cultures that were at one point popular and even dominant in the places where the myth persists today. Like a lot of our American/European Christmas and Easter traditions come from pagans and then from Jewish traditions, because that's what people in Europe were into before Christianity moved in and had to make a few sacrifices to get everybody on board. One way to check about the shamanic influence on Christmas is to check what the Russians do, since they're the ones who first had contact with this indigenous culture. And so maybe to pave the way to better relations, the Russians did adopt some of their traditions. So let's look at Russian Christmas traditions to see if they have those markers. Russia's version of Saint Nick, Father Christmas, Santa Claus, is Ded Moroz, literally Father Frost, and he looks like this. He doesn't dress exclusively in red. His sled is pulled by horses. He doesn't even have any reindeer, though in some places he is now starting to meld with Santa. So he's getting redder and more reindeered because, again, that's how these things go. Are you a mythological creature who's been around for a few centuries? Well, pal, you better be ready to adapt if you want to stick around. You can probably guess why this Santa magic mushroom connection continues to get clicks despite a complete lack of evidence. You know, drugs, holidays, the opportunity to say, I bet you didn't know that hallucinogenic reindeer piss is the reason for the season at your next company's Christmas party. But the real source of a lot of this is, I think, revealed in this NPR piece from 2010 about Donald Pfister, biology professor and curator of Harvard's Farlow Reference Library and Herbarium, and his colleague, Anne Pringle. Add it all up, and what do you get? Pringle connected the dots. People are flying. The mushroom turns into a happy personification named Santa. She said it with a laugh, but the connection between psychedelic mushrooms and the Santa story has gradually woven itself into popular culture, at least the popular culture of mycology, mushroom science. So every year, when Christmas draws near, Pfister gathers the students in his introductory botany class and, no doubt with a mischievous twinkle in his eye, tells the tale of Santa and the psychedelic mushrooms. This was clearly just a fun fluff piece that isn't even that subtle about the fact that this is all just a fun yarn. It's a modern myth about an ancient myth. But we can't have nice, fun, eye-twinkling things like that today. As the story gets passed from outlet to outlet and social media network to social media network, that subtle playfulness gets dropped. What is actually a story about a biology professor goofing around with his first-year students every Christmas lecture becomes the truth about Santa Claus that they don't want you to know, which, you know, leaves it to annoying buzzkills like me to pipe up and say, well, actually, that's not true. So I'm sorry, but, well, actually, it's not true. I know, I'm always the buzzkill. But you know what? Don't let this get in the way of appreciating the true reason for how we got the Santa we know today. The fact that he wears red and white is because he's based on an ancient bloodletter who used to go door to door in Mesopotamia, curing the sick by slicing their veins open. That's the red. If the patient had been good that year, he would then be bandaged up again. That's the white. If they were naughty, he would let them bleed to death, and then their remains would be loaded into a sleigh and taken to the local reindeer farm, where those animals would consume them, because, like pigs, it is well known that reindeer will voraciously eat anything you give them. There, that's the true reason for the season. You can use that at the next company Christmas party.